Hey, 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 FitMama. Jen Oliver here, your host of the FitMama podcast. This is the work in to your workout. Hey, 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 Jen Oliver here for our first episode of the new year. And we are talking all about stress today, which none of us are immune to. Today I'm talking about positive stress called eustress, spelled EU stress, or the opposite, which is distress, which is obviously the negative side of stress. So we normally think this is a negative thing. When we think about stress or when we hear this word stress, it almost already starts to evoke that negative feeling inside us. So I want to change that a little for you because none of us are immune to stress and our life is naturally going to be filled with much of it. So I want you to be really prepared for it this year. And as we ease into the new year, we at FitMama are all about new year, new rules, new ways of being and thinking, and not just going through the same motions. Not that you need to change, not that anything you're doing is bad, but looking at things like it happens at this time of year when we're taking stock of what our last year was like, what our next year will bring, when we're looking at what served us last year or what really worked and made us really happy and what really wasn't as good as we thought it might be. Because a lot of the time we enter into negotiations or plans with ourselves or make rules, goals, or set intentions that actually aren't that good. What we think that they will be aren't really that good once we enter into them. So it can be a really freeing time around now, around the ringing in of a new year, where we let go of things that don't serve us and we allow new possibilities to enter our world, because that's what happens around this time of year. It's that natural break when the new year comes in and this possibility of what can be comes with it. That feeling that change could happen and it doesn't have to be so hard. At least that's what I want to help you with, is not feeling like it has to be so hard. Many of us fear change and we want things to stay comfortable and the same as they were. I get it. I totally get it. We want that comfort. We want to be in our comfort zone. That is our natural desire as humans. Our bodies, minds, and hearts get used to things a certain way or doing a certain routine, and going outside that just feels too painful, especially when we've really laid down those pathways in our mind, body, heart, and gut. But one of the biggest things that I see and hear this time of year is regarding stress. With the holidays, we know we're all freaking out about stress, and rightfully so. Our culture has decided that this time of year around the holidays is all about spending all your money, buying things, taking up all your time, throwing or attending parties, drinking and eating more than your body can handle, and sleeping less, with absolutely no quiet time to be seen for weeks. Does that sound familiar? I would be mega stressed too if I subscribed to this. It's completely unreasonable to expect this of yourself over that holiday time. And of course, we want to fully participate, but what does fully participating really mean? That's what I really want you to start considering here. The thing that I want to debunk today in this episode is specifically this: the thought that stress is bad. Yes, nobody thrives under those pressures I listed above, where you're depleting your life, essentially, including your bank account. Naturally, it would make sense that we don't want those stresses in our lives. Absolutely. But when we talk about stress as bad in terms of a blanket statement, we are really doing us a disservice. Saying this makes me stressed or that stresses me out, or just going around thinking I am so stressed all the time. These are things we don't want to feel or say, but that's the negative side of stress. And that's the side that we just subscribe to when we aren't aware of what possibilities there are, because that's the dark side of stress, which does come and it usually shows up in our lives. And then if it hangs out for too long, it becomes what we call chronic stress. We all know chronic stress, and stress that is chronic is something like someone smacking you in the head over and over and over. Even if you try and get away, that person keeps chasing you and smacking you in the head. Nobody wants this. I get that. Chronic stress sucks. Chronic stress can come from myriad things, such as living with an ill family member, having bills to pay that are more than what you're bringing in, getting deeper into debt that way, having a boss that yells at you or makes you feel like crap, having no time in your schedule, no space. I mean, these are all chronic stresses, and they start out as an initial that sends us into this fight, flight, or fright mode, which turns out to be our way of life when it keeps on going. And so we end up living in that mind-body state, which does not feel good. You will know this if you've lived there for even one day. Fight and flight mode, though, is what we call the sympathetic nervous system. And this is when the nervous system, particularly the sympathetic side, which is the heightened arousal side, kicks in, and it releases chemicals that flow through us that tell us now is the time to run, hide, get help, escape, or lay low. This is that trigger, right? Whatever happens in our life that starts out as a little stress, I spent too much money, now I'm in a little bit of debt. And it sends us into that sympathetic overdrive that, if continued, becomes our way of living. And this becomes very, very depleting. And when we're living in this state of chronic stress, we have that chemical cocktail of hormones and neurotransmitters and chemicals that are going through our systems that constantly keep our body under stress. We don't get then to actually enter the parasympathetic mode of our nervous system, which takes care of what we call rest and digest. Yes, you heard that right. Rest and digest. Kind of feels like a foreign concept, doesn't it? Sounds cushy and fun though, right? This is why I'm always telling people, if they are stressed about what to eat, or they're stressed about their program, their exercise program, or whatever it is that they're trying to follow, the stress from that, including and not excluding the additional stress that you add by pushing yourself through hard workouts or pushing yourself in ways that don't feel good, in the idea that they're going to make you feel good, which is sometimes counterproductive. But it really doesn't matter at the end of the day what you're actually doing for eating or exercise when you're in this state of chronic stress, or when you're pushing yourself to the limit like that. Because the chemical cocktail that is flowing through your body from this sympathetic nervous system stimulation and overdrive is actually going to store fat on your body, which I know that you will probably not want, because your body is preparing to run and hide and sprint, really. Our bodies are naturally designed to this. When stress comes, right? Like back in the day, we've all heard this adage before, or this story. Back in the day when, humans were first evolving, there was a lion, there was a saber-toothed tiger, there was something that would come and cause us that fight or flight or fright response, which would then get us stopping any rest and digest and moving us into that sympathetic overdrive. So this is what leads to that sort of chronic breakdown and very negative side effects on the body. And our gut is so closely linked with our brain and the rest of our body that stress, especially chronic stress, will totally mess up our digestion and our ability to feel rested. We'll constantly have that feeling in our gut that just does not feel good. It's pretty amazing how interconnected everything is, don't you think? In our Western world, we love to look at things in isolation, and it's a very reductionist way of seeing things. If you've heard of research that is reductionist, it's about thinking that things as a whole are just a sum of their parts. So we look at things under a microscope and we see something and we think, oh, this must be the representation of the whole. But that's just not true, right? If you look at an elephant and you look at their ear under a microscope, it's very different from the hair on their tail or their rump or their toe or the bottom of their foot or whatever. So things are not just a sum of their parts. Researchers have been looking under a microscope for years trying to sort out things, and what they find, such as the fact that lycopene in tomatoes is amazing, or vitamin C in citrus is absolutely necessary, which in many ways is correct. So we think, rather than eating a tomato or citrus, let me just take a pill that has even more vitamin C or lycopene. And unfortunately, usually the results are dismal. Our bodies either don't absorb it or it doesn't have the same positive benefits or whatever the case may be. Things just don't always work that way. Looking at things through a holistic perspective is where the future of science is going. Research is really looking into now, okay, so how does this whole thing integrate and work together? Because we've broken down things and we're still exploring these details, but how do things work as a whole is becoming much more interesting and much more applicable to us as humans. We're now researching how things work in this integrative way so that we can keep the whole and not break it down, because it really gives us much more of a clear vision. We're now realizing that the number 4 may be a result of 3 plus 1 or 2 plus 2, but when looked at it in the opposite direction, 2 plus 2 can also equal 10, not just 4. So that might be a little out of the scope for this one, but it's pretty cool and curious when you start looking into the quantum physics world and the universal laws that we're actually all living under, regardless of whether we know it or not. My point in bringing this to you today is to remind you that, again, like I always like to remind you, FitMama, you have a choice. And not making a choice is also making a choice. You just don't realize it. So I am going to offer you a different one here today. When we live life in a reactive way, by creating things around us and not choosing proactively how we want to live, we're entering into the world of it's not in my control. And while many things in life aren't under control, and I'm always telling you to let go of control, how we react to stress actually is one of the things that we can control. Remember, stress itself isn't inherently bad. I mean, yes, someone dying or going through a divorce or losing one's house is bad. Don't get me wrong. And my heart goes out to those living in very difficult circumstances. It's actually quite unfathomable what people have to endure in their lives that are very, very stressful. And I'm not negating that. That being said, though, for us living in particularly average situations with those quote unquote normal stresses, which are, of course, very intense day-to-day stressors that we're encountering living as moms, women, powerful, high vibe people in this world today, we have the power to control our body's response to the stresses. So while we are living high vibe and experiencing stress in our lives, how our bodies respond to those stressors can actually not be physically and emotionally debilitating, as we might think naturally they must be. So before we get into the how part of doing this, I'm encouraging you here to start seeing that the stresses in our lives are something that we can welcome. We don't have to hide from them. We don't have to escape them. We don't have to run away or fight or fright away from them. It allows us, these stresses actually allow us to grow and learn in ways that not having stress would actually not provide us. We know from things like muscle growth or brain growth that both need a level of stress on them to allow that growth to happen. For example, if we didn't push our muscles beyond their natural capacity, whether it's weightlifting or bending or squatting or whatever it is that we were doing, our muscles would not grow stronger, right? We'd still all be babies who couldn't move, right? The way we developed our muscles and our ability to stand and walk as humans is actually through putting stress on the muscles, joints, pressure points, etc. on the body. So if we didn't push our muscles, they wouldn't grow, right? If we don't use our brains, we know it's the same, quote unquote, use it or lose it, where dementia or worse things can happen to our brains if we don't stress our brains in that way that makes them adapt to become stronger and more resilient. Does this mean that we all have to suffer, though? No, I actually don't believe that to be true. I think the opposite is true. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. As one of my mentors, Dr. Wayne Dyer, always said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And this is one of my all-time favorite lines. And on this podcast, you've probably heard me say it already, and you will hear me say it again, because it's all about changing the way we look at things. We can start out by looking at stress as a horrible negative thing that we need to escape, or through listening to a podcast like this, we can see that it could actually be a positive thing. So, how do you actually start to see things in life as positive when they feel very stressful? Well, first, ask yourself, are they really positive? Because some stresses aren't, right? Your mother-in-law who criticizes you every chance she gets, or your job that keeps you up too late at night, are they positive? Probably not, but it is a choice as to how you let your mother-in-law or your job affect you physically, right? Emotionally. You can choose, right? Your mother-in-law can say anything she wants to you and it can roll off your back, or it can stab you deep in the heart and make you feel sick and cry and not function and then chug a bottle of wine. Either choice is yours to make. And I'm here to tell you that you do actually have a choice. Because remember, it's not the stress itself that is debilitating, but it's the fact that you're responding to the stress in a stressful way, right? You're allowing that chemical cascade of hormones and all kinds of stuff go through your body in a way that negatively affects you. And you must have heard this, that stress is implicated with almost 100% of disease today on the planet. But did you expect that stress is also implicated in probably 100% of people living thriving, successful lives, right? People we look up to. Who are those people that you look up to? Do you really think that they've never had stresses? Who are the people that are thriving, in your opinion, in this world? Do you think that they never had stress? I beg to differ. I think it's actually quite the opposite. They might have had more stress than the average person, which has allowed them to be truly resilient. Oprah has stress. Pro athletes have stress. Any level of executives, doctors, lawyers, teachers, any level of worker has stress, right? Celebrities have stress. Parents have more than their fair share of stress. And a lot of these individuals have this stress, but it actually can be possibly the reason why they are so successful to this day. So this year, 2018, realize that no, you don't have to or even want to break up with stress. You don't want to hide from stress. You don't want to go live under a tree on a hill and have no stress imposed upon you, because that is actually not what is going to make you happy or healthy. What you do need, though, is a solid stress management plan and an understanding of how you can actually be in control of how stress is being responded to by your body. So a good reframing helps, as in me attempting to explain that to you here. But now we're going to move into the how, the actual what do I do when I'm feeling stressed to move through it and have it not affect me in a negative way. So I'm going to take you through my 5 S's as to how to do this, okay? I'll list them first, and then I'm going to go through them each briefly, very briefly. First, C. Number 1 is C. Number 2, smile. Number 3, slow down. Number 4, shift. And number 5, solve. These 5 steps I really recommend to you. And if you can remember see, smile, slow down, shift, and solve, you will be well on your way from moving from distress to eustress, which actually will serve you better. So number 1 is see. See the stress in front of you. Actually open your eyes and stop escaping it. See the stress that you've been hiding from or denying yourself from seeing. See the stresses that don't work for you. See the ones that are pressuring you and see how you might be able to actually change the circumstances to either eliminate the stress altogether or manage it in a way that feels good and is no longer overstimulating your sympathetic nervous system. So the first thing is to see it, to actually not put the blinders on and look right ahead of you as to what is going on in your life right now. Number 2, smile. Once you see them, and this may take some time or, it could take a few weeks or months to see them all, but once you even see one, just look at it, label it, say, okay, this stress is staying up too late. Every morning I don't want to get up. I do feel awful every day. I feel so tired. I'm staying up too late, right? So you see that stress. One of the stresses on you is that you're staying up too late. Great. You've identified it. You see it. Now you can smile because now that you've seen it, there's something that you can actually do about it. And smiling itself releases a different cascade of chemicals that will start to tell your body, don't worry, no need for alert here. Smile because this is something that you see and can now change. And whatever stress is here, it is here to teach you something that you get to actually grow from. Smile because why not? Smiling feels good and it will absolutely, I guarantee, will change your state from feeling stressed to blessed. There was a study I read once actually about people putting a pencil horizontally in their mouth. So if you can imagine a pencil across your mouth, not holding onto the tip of it, but across, which forces the lips to turn up in a smile. They found that when people had this pencil in their mouth, it actually changed people's mood to improve after even a short time of just putting this pencil in their mouth. So put a pen or a pencil in your mouth if you're feeling down and start to notice that just how the sides of your lips curl up, it actually starts to tell your body messages, right? It's a two-way street. So just as you think that your body is telling you you're stressed, you can tell your body, we're not stressed. It's all good here. That's number 2. So first is see, second is smile. Third is slow down. Realize that whatever is stressing you out, FitMama, is probably a sign that you are in desperate need for a break. Some quiet time maybe, some space, a place that is uninterrupted, or maybe you just need some support. Slowing down and not trying to cram more into your busy life is a huge step in releasing the stress you feel. So after you see and smile, tell yourself it's time to slow down. Number 4 is about shifting. Shifting the way that you see things, shifting your perspective to being proactive in your life right now. If it isn't the way that you had imagined, how can you make it more of what you want? How can you make the changes you want in your life? Shifting from feeling stuck in that victim mode of complaining or seeking validation in your fears, staying stuck or commiserating, turn that into being a victor. And you can go from victim mode to victor mode, where you see yourself as the hero of your story and you come out on top. This is a huge step in moving from stressed out to well stressed. Because we want stress. We want those little pushes. We want that press against the comfort zone, but we just don't want it to be as painful, right? So slow down and start to shift the way that you're seeing this. Lastly, number 5 is solve. Once you shift your perspective and you see things differently, once you've slowed down, smiled, and really seen what's going on, you now have that place that you can actually start to solve the issue. If it isn't an issue to be solved, for example, someone in your life is sick and you can't help change that, then creating a solution around dealing with the stressful situation in a more positive way. Instead of feeling so negative and sad about this person who's sick and binge eating or binge drinking every night and trying to make yourself feel better that way, which is pleasure achieved in the negative, also known as pain and more of it, you can start to think, what would make me feel better? What would actually make me feel better without having those negative side effects? How about going for a walk at night or watching your favorite Netflix show while you're walking or running on the treadmill? How about lifting some weights or pushing your body in a different way that feels good instead? You will find the solutions, because when you're open and starting to see things in a different way, you are going to be able to deal with a stressful situation in that more positive way. You'll be able to see the silver lining or that collateral beauty we talked about in the last episode. Solving doesn't mean the stress goes away completely, but it does mean that you get a handle on the physiological reaction happening in your body, because you don't see it as a life-threatening stress anymore that you need to escape from. It's something you can face, you can deal with the emotions around it, take action on what you need to do to possibly change it if that's possible. And otherwise, that cascade of hormones within you can cease and you can create and reclaim living from a space that is more parasympathetic nervous system, not that overstimulated sympathetic state. So you can re-enter rest and digest mode, which is where we want to spend most of our time as humans. We don't want to be in that parasympathetic overstimulated state. Easier said than done? Yep, as it always is. But the thing to remember, FitMama, is that just going through the simple act of breathing allows you to check back in and control your nervous system. Even if mentally, emotionally, you do none of the things that I just mentioned here, as I teach over and over in the Love FitMama Way book and with my Pearl pull-ups exercise, just breathing deeply into your inner core has profound effects on calming the nervous system. With your breath, you actually have that magic easy button we all hope for to help take distress and move it over to the more positive cousin, eustress, where it will serve you instead of hurt you. That's it for today, FitMama. I will leave you with this. Just breathe. Hugs and love to you. See you on the next episode, where I will be talking about setting intentions and cultivating healthy habits that stick. Remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Allow yourself to flow into change, not push against the resistance or pressure that you feel at this time of year or at any time. You got this, FitMama, and I am here for you. See you online.